Well, it didn't quite work out for Brendan Rodgers either after the weekend, did it? Because he is now gone from Leicester City. He's won 7 in 28 matches played, and Leicester sit 19th, 2 points above bottom club Southampton, and they, like Chelsea, are in the market for a new manager. Brendan Rodgers gone. Martin Keown is alongside Simon and myself. Simon, you know, Leicester, I said it in the introduction, and I can't think of a more appropriate ways to phrase it. Was this a club sleepwalking towards the Championship before this decision was made at the weekend?
Not necessarily, because I think there's been games where they've been far better than they were against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace were resurgent in that game. There was a different feeling. The irony of it is that one person that gets accused of putting a handbrake on is Roy Hodgson, and in this game, Crystal Palace were anything but on with the handbrake. 31 shots on goal, 21 of them in the first half. Palace were dominant and unlucky not to be out of sight before the half had even turned to 45 minutes. But Leicester, for me, I mean, Brendan Rodgers, to me, has been asleep at the wheel for about 15, 16 months. You know, going back to the outburst after the Nottingham Forest Cup game last year when they gave up their holding of the cup in a very poor fashion. People will argue...
Very scathing that day, wasn't he?
He was, and did nothing about it.
Was that the beginning of the end for him?
I think so. And I think it was the beginning of the end of a lot of things from Brendan in terms of people's perceptions of him. He did a great job for the first couple of years. Winning them an FA Cup. All this has been forgotten over the last 18 months.
Place finishes.
Yeah, and now with that group of players, he's struggling. But that group of players, with irrespective of the background noise about whether Leicester's up for sale or the owners have lost interest and he's not been supported, that group of players is far better and far more valuable than second to bottom in the Premier League. And that is on Brendan Rodgers. So to go to the nub of your question, do I think they're sleepwalking into the Championship? Well, given the fact that we can't pick it, Bournemouth keep winning games that no one expects them to do. The only team that looked to me like they've done really now is Southampton. So there's a distinct possibility that Brendan Rodgers wasn't able to turn this ship around because he wasn't exhibiting that he was able to do so.
When you look at the phraseology, and you touched on this at the top of the show, Simon, do you not think that Rodgers was sacked? When Leicester say Leicester has reached a mutual agreement with Brendan Rodgers that will see him leave the club after 4 years as our men's first team manager. That doesn't sound like a sacking, does it?
I think he's been... I mean, I had a similar conversation with Steve Coppell. We just didn't get on with one another. We didn't like one another. So mutual consent was we agreed that we didn't want to work with one another. And I think and this is a different dynamic. There's not probably the dislike personally that was between myself and Steve Coppell. There is a dislike of the results in this situation. And I think Brendan's gone, I don't fancy this anymore. And I think he's exhibited that to the owners and not exhibited a shoulders back, chest out sort of attitude. And they've gone, well, this is fantastic, thanks very much. Well, then we might as well call it quits.
But he didn't sound like that in the clip we just heard.
Well, they often don't, do they? They often are very... And he, above all people, as I said the other day, he's the Henry Kissinger of British football at this moment in time. He will politic and diplomate his way out of every single conversation, whereas he should have been turning around and saying that. He actually made the case in the interview, listened to it earlier on, that Leicester were unlucky to lose that game. What? Palace had 31 shots on goal. You know, what in God's name are you talking about? You got battered. You got battered to an inch of your life.
I mean, his diplomacy seemed to run out, didn't it?
Jim, I just wanted the story of the season, really, because Wesley Fofana was a late signing, wasn't he? That was taken away from the football club, and you looked, and it looked like there wasn't going to be any real investment from Leicester. But nonetheless, he still had really good players there that you think they could actually do a decent job with. Kasper Schmeichel, the way that he let him go, that looked like it was personal to me. On the outside, I don't think he should have allowed him to go. I don't believe
not to the goalkeeper we put in, by the way.
No, I don't think Ward was really at the level. That's been an Achilles heel all season. Now, you're the manager. You have to manage these situations. I thought, actually, when he took over the job, Wes Morgan was a player that kind of went against what Brendan normally does. He normally gets rid of the big player. But he said, do you know what, I'm going to embrace and I'm going to keep you at the football club. And I thought, over time, it seems like he dislikes his players. I know he gives one story to the media.
That was my job.
I know that he does it. He gives that one. I'm just trying to scratch the surface a little bit. Maybe he needs to keep loving his players. I think he lost the players. They're second from bottom. You're not there by accident.
There's not much to love.
You're there because you're the second worst team in the Premier League, and that's what's happened.
But how's he going to love them, Mark, when that lot go out and they let him down?
He has been sacked, and it might now look like musical chairs that someone now is saying, "Oh, let's give him the Spurs job." He's going to get work.
But again,
we know
like,
he's a top manager.
Martin, again, like Potter,
he needs to
though,
spell out of
it's
it, Jim.
It's not Brendan
to
who
learn
goes on the
and get
Leicester
better.
shirt.
They can't stop.
It's the players who've got themselves into this predicament.
Yeah, but okay, when you do set pieces, then they've conceded 30 goals from the last 2 seasons. Set pieces, is that good enough? Collectively, you work on it as a group and the
you
staff.
improve the players.
You can't say you're not a part of the problem
That is right.
if you conceded. So it's like, Brendan, yes, you've got to a certain level. I've been a big admirer, but now it's going backwards. Now, do you know, he tried to evolve it, he tried to turn it, he tried to go for the players when they lost to Forest.
Yeah.
But he didn't have then the resources in his own club. But he must have known that. He didn't have the ear of the club to know what resources they had. And to get rid of the goalkeeper at the start of the season, no, he should have patched it up, give him another year at least, and said, right, let's get through this storm. We could go down.
Okay.
It could get much worse. And it
they
certainly
might.
has.
And they might. Here's one for you, Simon. Who's in a job first next? Potter or Rodgers?
Oh, that's a $64 million question, isn't it? I would say Potter.
Where?
Don't know.
Leicester?
But look, I mean, people will say, I mean, it's a real... Dean Smith took the indignation of getting sacked by Aston Villa and then dropped the next day into Norwich, right? But that's a different dynamic.
6 days later, he was in the job
You're going from the penthouse
at Norwich
to part of the basement now. And from Chelsea to somewhere like Leicester, for me, is I don't know, even
a better fit, isn't it?
Even with the
Potter.
well, he won't like that observation at all. And any football manager that's gone to Chelsea would say, hang on a second, I'm a better fit for a team at second bottom in the Premier League. He's not going to like that sort of analogy. But you're probably right. It's the right... But that's the club he should have perhaps gone to.
Let him have time out.
The argument is, why would you go anywhere from Brighton right now? Because Brighton are a side that's in ascendancy. They've got the best data analysts in the actual business. They're buying the best players. They're bringing them through. They're 2 years ahead of Arsenal, 2 years ahead of Chelsea, 2 years ahead of everybody.
To turn it back to Chelsea, would you go and get Conte now?
No, God knows. No, what the Conte we've just seen walk out the door at Tottenham?
No. Did he not have a success? Won a Premier League
and did
FA Cup
and did he not fall out with Chelsea like he falls out of everybody?
But that was a different set of owners, wasn't it? It's a different owner.
Fine, absolutely, but the same characteristics are exhibited by these owners. They've just shown you they are just the same as Roman Abramovich.
So, I mean, Leicester, when you look at it, they've got to think quick, because coming up for them tomorrow night, Villa, who go to Stamford Bridge at the weekend and win.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.